Dealer mocks Jennifer Lopez's old Honda. When she returns in a Rolls-Royce, everything changes. The Los Angeles sun beat down mercilessly on the pristine windows of luxury motors, where Maria Delgado adjusted her Cartier bracelet for the 100th time that morning. 20 years in luxury car sales had taught her one crucial lesson. Appearance was everything. The showroom gleamed with the latest models. Bentleys, Rolls-Royces, and Range Rovers, arranged like precious jewels under the strategic lighting. "Did you see what Mrs. Henderson was wearing when she picked up her Bentley?" Maria whispered to her colleague James as she reapplied her red lipstick. "Hermes from head to toe. Now that's our kind of client." James nodded, straightening his Italian silk tie. "Speaking of which, I just closed the deal on that white Rolls-Royce Ghost. Commission's going to be sweet this month." The morning crowd consisted of their usual clientele: successful executives, celebrities, managers, and old money families who treated six-figure purchases as casually as buying coffee. Maria had perfected the art of identifying potential buyers from time wasters within seconds. The Rolex on their wrist, the cut of their suit, the confidence in their stride, these were her markers of success. "Excuse me," a soft voice interrupted her thoughts. "I'm interested in looking at the new Range Rover." Maria turned, her practiced smile freezing slightly at the sight before her. A woman in her early 50s stood there, wearing plain jeans and a simple white t-shirt. No designer bag, no visible jewelry, not even a hint of makeup. But there was something familiar about her face. "Do you have an appointment?" Maria asked, her tone already dismissive. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, she spotted the woman's car. A dusty silver 2008 Honda Civic that stuck out like a sore thumb among the Porsches and Mercedes in the parking lot. "No, I don't," the woman replied, maintaining eye contact. "I was driving by and saw the model I'm interested in through the window." "The black Range Rover Autobiography?" Maria's perfectly shaped eyebrow arched higher. "The one with the executive package?" "That particular model starts at $135,000. She emphasized the price, expecting the woman to realize she was in the wrong place. Instead, the woman, Jennifer, simply nodded. "Yes, that's the one. Could you tell me more about its features?" A group of well-dressed executives walked in, and Maria's eyes darted toward them eagerly. She couldn't waste time with someone who clearly couldn't afford their inventory. "Perhaps," she said slowly, "I can direct you to our sister dealership. They specialize in more accessible vehicles. Pre-owned Hondas, similar to what you're currently driving." The showroom's air conditioning couldn't mask the chill in her voice. A few other customers glanced their way, some with embarrassment, others with the same dismissive look Maria wore. Jennifer's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in her eyes. "I understand," she said quietly. "You've made your position quite clear." "I'm simply trying to help you find something more suitable for your budget," Maria replied, her voice dripping with fake concern. "We wouldn't want you to waste your time." James, who'd been watching the exchange, approached with a smirk. "Maria, the Wilsons are here to discuss the Bentley Continental. Shall I take over here?" "No need," Jennifer said, her voice steady but tight. "I was just leaving." She turned toward the door, then paused. "You know, I've learned that the way people treat you when they think you have nothing to offer says everything about their character." Maria rolled her eyes as the door closed behind Jennifer. "Can you believe some people? Walking in here looking like that and expecting to be taken seriously?" "Did you see that Honda?" James laughed. "Probably borrowed it from her employer." The rest of the morning passed in a blur of qualified customers and serious negotiations. During her lunch break, Maria sat in the staff room, scrolling through her phone while picking at her salad. A notification popped up. Another celebrity had just purchased a fleet of luxury vehicles for their upcoming music video. She smiled, imagining the commission on such a sale. "Hey Maria," her manager Robert called from the doorway. "The Wilsons are back. They're ready to move forward with the Bentley." Maria straightened her Chanel blazer, pushing thoughts of the Honda woman out of her mind. This was her world: high-end sales, premium customers, and six-figure commissions. She had worked too hard to get here to waste time on people who didn't belong. As she walked back to the showroom, she caught her reflection in a car window. Perfect hair, designer clothes, confident smile. everything she had crafted over years of climbing the social ladder. She remembered her own humble beginnings, but those memories only strengthened her resolve. She had changed her life through hard work and determination, and in her mind, anyone who hadn't done the same simply hadn't tried hard enough. The afternoon brought a steady stream of serious buyers. Maria moved smoothly from one sale to another, her practiced charm and extensive knowledge of luxury vehicles on full display. Each interaction reinforced her belief in her instincts about people. The ones who belonged in luxury motors looked and acted the part. Near closing time, she overheard two junior salespeople discussing the day's events. "Did you see that Honda in the parking lot earlier?" one whispered. "I thought security was going to ask them to move it." "I know. Can you imagine thinking you could just walk in here and look at Range Rovers? Some people have no self-awareness." Maria smiled to herself, pleased that the newer staff were learning to recognize their target clientele. In this business, time was money, and they couldn't afford to waste either on dreamers and time wasters. As she gathered her things at the end of the day, Robert stopped by her desk. "Great job with the Wilsons, Maria. That's why you're our top seller. You know exactly who our real customers are." "Thanks, Robert," she beamed. "It's all about maintaining our standards. Speaking of which, maybe we should consider having security pre-screen visitors. That Honda situation today was rather embarrassing." Robert nodded thoughtfully. "I'll bring it up at the next management meeting. Can't have just anyone walking in off the street." Maria's Porsche purred to life as she pulled out of the dealership's parking lot. The sun was setting over Los Angeles, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. She felt satisfied with another successful day, secure in her position at the top of her profession. Little did she know, the woman in the Honda would soon return to shake the very foundations of her carefully constructed world. But for now, Maria drove home, convinced she had done exactly the right thing in dismissing someone who so clearly didn't belong in her exclusive realm of luxury and privilege. The following morning started like any other. Maria arrived early, her heels clicking against the polished floor, as she prepared the showroom for another day of high-end sales. The cars gleamed under the morning light, their pristine surfaces reflecting the opulence that surrounded them. "Morning, everyone," she called out to the staff as they began arriving. "Remember, we have the McLaren unveiling this afternoon. VIP clients only." She settled at her desk, reviewing the day's appointments. The memory of yesterday's Honda incident had already faded, replaced by anticipation of the important clients scheduled to visit. After all, in her world, people who arrived in dusty old cars weren't worth remembering. The morning progressed smoothly. Maria guided a famous athlete through the features of a new Aston Martin, arranged a test drive of the latest Bentley for a tech executive, and fielded calls from several celebrity managers about upcoming purchases. "Maria," James called out around noon. "Did you see the news about that big music video shoot happening in LA? They're saying it's going to feature a whole fleet of luxury cars." "Really?" she replied, intrigued. "Any word on which dealership they're working with?" "Not yet, but with our inventory, they'd be crazy not to come here." Maria nodded, already calculating the potential commission from such a massive sale. This was the kind of deal she lived for: high profile, high value, and perfectly aligned with their brand. As the afternoon approached, more customers filled the showroom. Maria moved among them with practiced ease, her trained eye quickly assessing who deserved her attention. A young tech millionaire, a well-known producer, a real estate mogul. These were her people, the ones who understood the world she inhabited. "Excuse me." A client called from near the Range Rover display. "Could you explain the executive package options?" Maria turned, her sales smile already in place. It was the same Range Rover the Honda woman had asked about yesterday. "Of course," she replied, launching into her well-rehearsed presentation. "This particular model represents the pinnacle of luxury SUV engineering." As she spoke, she couldn't help but feel a touch of satisfaction. This was how it should be: a proper client, dressed appropriately, asking about a vehicle they could actually afford. The natural order of things, as far as she was concerned. The day continued in this fashion, a parade of wealth and privilege that validated Maria's worldview. By late afternoon, she had already secured 2 major sales and was feeling particularly pleased with herself. "Another excellent day," Robert commented as he passed her desk. "This is why we maintain our standards, Maria. Quality attracts quality." She smiled in agreement, watching as a Maserati pulled into the parking lot. This was her world, and she was its gatekeeper. Anyone who didn't meet her exacting standards simply didn't deserve to be part of it. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the showroom windows, Maria started preparing to close up. She had no way of knowing that tomorrow would bring a visitor who would shatter her carefully maintained illusions about success, worth, and judgment. But for now, she simply straightened the already perfect displays, adjusted her designer watch, and looked forward to another day of serving what she considered to be the right kind of people. "See you tomorrow," she called to her colleagues as she left, her Porsche's keys jingling in her hand. "Let's hope we don't have any more Honda incidents to deal with." The laughter that followed her comment echoed through the showroom, a sound that would come back to haunt her sooner than she could imagine. But tonight, Maria drove home feeling invincible, secure in her position and her judgments, completely unaware that her carefully constructed world was about to be turned upside down. The next morning dawned unusually hot for Los Angeles. Maria arrived at Luxury Motors earlier than usual, her mind preoccupied with the McLaren event scheduled for that afternoon. As she walked through the employee entrance, the cleaning staff was just finishing up, making sure every surface gleamed. "Morning, Mrs. Delgado." Manuel, one of the cleaners, greeted her with a warm smile. She barely nodded in response, her attention already on her phone. A notification caught her eye. Another celebrity was shopping for luxury cars in LA. "Perfect timing," she muttered to herself. "Maria!" Robert's voice boomed across the showroom. "Got a minute?" She hurried to his office, her heels clicking against the marble floor. "What's up, Robert?" "I heard rumors that Jennifer Lopez is planning something big for her new music video. Might be looking for multiple vehicles." He leaned back in his leather chair. "If she comes in, I want you on it. You're our best closer." Maria's eyes lit up. "Jennifer Lopez? That would be huge for us." "Exactly. So keep your eyes peeled. These celebrities sometimes send their assistants first to scout locations." Back at her desk, Maria found herself daydreaming about the potential commission from such a massive sale. She glanced at the dusty Honda still parked across the street. Apparently, its owner worked at the coffee shop nearby. "Can't they park somewhere else?" she complained to James. "It's ruining our aesthetic." "Speaking of ruining aesthetics," James smirked. "Remember that woman yesterday? The one asking about the Range Rover? Don't remind me." Maria rolled her eyes. "I can't believe she—" "Excuse me," a soft voice interrupted them. Maria turned to find an elderly woman in simple clothes standing there. Her heart sank. Another time-waster. But before she could respond, she noticed the Cartier watch peeking out from under the woman's sleeve. "Yes. How can I help you?" Maria's tone switched instantly to welcoming. "My grandson is interested in the new Bentley," the woman said. "He's a bit busy with his tech company, so I'm doing the initial looking." Maria's smile widened. This was why first impressions could sometimes be deceiving. But only sometimes, she reminded herself. After all, this woman had subtle signs of wealth, unlike yesterday's Honda driver. The morning passed quickly. Maria sold 2 Bentleys and a Rolls-Royce, further cementing her position as top seller. During her lunch break, she sat with her usual group, all of them discussing the upcoming McLaren event. "I heard even the valet parking is exclusive," Sarah from finance mentioned. "No cars under $100,000 allowed." "As it should be." Maria nodded approvingly. "We need to maintain standards." Just then, they noticed some commotion outside. A group of people was gathering near the entrance, phones out, pointing at something. "What's going on?" Maria stood up, curious. "Probably another celebrity," James suggested. "We get so many these days." But as Maria walked closer to the window, her blood ran cold. There, being towed away, was the dusty Honda from yesterday. Its owner, a young barista from the coffee shop, was pleading with the tow truck driver. "Please," the girl was saying. "I just started this job. I can't afford the tow fees." Maria watched the scene unfold, feeling a slight twinge of something. Guilt? No, she decided. Rules were rules. The girl should have parked elsewhere. "Did you call the tow company?" James asked, appearing beside her. Maria straightened her blazer. Of course, that car was bad for business. The afternoon brought more promising customers. Maria was in the middle of describing the Rolls-Royce Ghost's features to a movie producer when Robert rushed over. "Maria," he whispered urgently. I just got word. Jennifer Lopez's team might be scouting dealerships today. They're being very discreet about it. Don't worry, Maria assured him. If they come in, I'll know. Celebrities have a certain presence. She spent the rest of the day on high alert, scrutinizing every customer who walked through the door. But as closing time approached, there had been no sign of J.Lo or her team. Maybe tomorrow, Robert said encouragingly. Just keep your eyes open. And remember, they might send someone undercover first. Maria laughed. Trust me, Robert. I can spot important clients a mile away. Nobody gets past my radar. As she gathered her things to leave, she noticed the empty spot where the Honda had been parked. The young barista was now walking to work, she'd heard. Something about that bothered her, but she pushed the feeling aside. Another successful day, she announced to no one in particular, her voice echoing in the nearly empty showroom. If only she knew that tomorrow would change everything, that the woman she had dismissed so casually would return to teach her the most important lesson of her career. But for now, Maria Delgado drove home in her Porsche, confident in her judgments, secure in her position, and completely unaware that her biggest mistake was just hours away from walking back through those doors. The universe, it seemed, had a lesson in humility planned for her, and it would arrive in the form of a dusty Honda Civic and its unlikely owner. The morning started with a buzz of excitement at Luxury Motors. A fleet of brand-new McLarens had arrived, and the staff was busy preparing for an exclusive afternoon showcase. Maria stood by her desk, directing the cleaning crew with military precision. Carlos, I want those windows spotless. And Anna, please make sure there's not a speck of dust on any of these vehicles. Today has to be perfect. James rushed over, his face flushed with excitement. Maria, you won't believe what I just heard. Word is that several celebrities are shopping for cars this week. Something about a big music video shoot. Really? Maria's eyes lit up. Any names? Nothing concrete yet, but their conversation was interrupted by the sound of a car alarm. Through the showroom windows, they watched as a sleek Maserati pulled into the lot, its driver clearly struggling with the key fob. I've got this one, Maria declared, already moving toward the entrance. This was more like it, proper clients with proper cars. The morning progressed smoothly. Maria sold 2 McLarens before lunch, her commission total for the month already reaching impressive heights. During her break, she sat with her usual group in the employee lounge. Remember that woman with the Honda yesterday? Sarah asked, stirring her designer coffee. I saw her at the bus stop this morning. Guess she couldn't even afford to fix her car. Maria smirked. Well, that's what happens when you try to play in the big leagues without the proper credentials. The conversation was interrupted by Robert, who burst into the lounge with unusual energy. Everyone, listen up. I just got word that someone big is coming to look at our inventory. I mean, really big. How big are we talking? James leaned forward. Let's just say, if this goes well, we could all have a very, very good month. Robert's eyes sparkled. They're being discreet about it, but my contact at the studio says they're looking to buy multiple vehicles. Maria, I want you on point for this. Maria straightened her Chanel blazer. Of course, when are they coming? That's just it. They're doing surprise visits to dealerships all over LA. Could be any time. So everyone needs to be on their A game. The afternoon brought a steady stream of wealthy clients. Maria moved from one to another with practiced ease, her radar constantly scanning for any sign of the mysterious VIP buyer. Around 3 o'clock, a commotion outside caught everyone's attention. Is that? James pressed his face against the window. A pristine white Bentley had pulled up, and out stepped a well-known record producer. But something else had caught Maria's eye. A dusty Honda Civic, driving slowly past the dealership. Her face darkened with recognition. I thought we took care of that situation, she muttered. But before she could dwell on it further, the sound of another vehicle approaching drew everyone's attention. This was no ordinary arrival. The purr of the engine alone announced that something special was about to happen. A gleaming Rolls-Royce Phantom, black as night and polished to perfection, glided into the parking lot with the grace of a panther. The windows were tinted, making it impossible to see who was inside. A professionally dressed chauffeur emerged first, his posture impeccable as he moved to open the rear door. Maria's heart began to race. This was it. This had to be the VIP client Robert had mentioned. She quickly checked her reflection in a nearby car window, adjusting her hair and straightening her designer suit. "James," she whispered urgently, "make sure everyone knows I'm handling this one." The chauffeur opened the rear door with practiced precision. A stillness fell over the showroom as everyone waited to see who would emerge. First, a pair of Christian Louboutin heels appeared, followed by legs that seemed to go on forever. Then, in a moment that would be forever etched in Maria's memory, Jennifer Lopez stepped out of the Rolls-Royce. But this wasn't the Jennifer Lopez from the tabloids or music videos. This was Jenny from the block in full power mode, wearing a crisp white Balmain suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, diamonds glinting at her ears and throat, her presence immediately commanding the space around her. Maria's smile froze on her face as recognition dawned. The simple woman in jeans and a t-shirt from yesterday, the one she had dismissed so cavalierly, had been none other than Jennifer Lopez herself. "Oh my God," she whispered, her knees suddenly weak. Jennifer wasn't alone. Behind her emerged two serious-looking men in suits, obviously security, and a sharp-dressed woman carrying a tablet, clearly her assistant. They moved with the coordinated precision of a team that had done this many times before. Maria took a step forward, her professional mask firmly in place despite her internal panic. But before she could speak, Jennifer's eyes locked onto her with laser focus. "I believe I spoke with you yesterday," Jennifer said, her voice carrying across the now silent showroom. "About a Range Rover?" Maria felt the color drain from her face. "Ms. Lopez, I had no idea." Jennifer held up a perfectly manicured hand, stopping Maria mid-sentence. "I'd like to speak with your manager." Her tone was polite, but left no room for argument. Robert appeared as if by magic, practically running from his office. "Miss Lopez, what an incredible honor. I'm Robert Chen, the general manager. Please, come this way." As Jennifer and her entourage followed Robert to his office, the showroom erupted into frenzied whispers. Maria stood rooted to the spot, her whole world tilting on its axis. "Was that really her yesterday, in the Honda?" James asked, his voice barely a whisper. "The Honda," Maria repeated numbly. "I had security tow a Honda this morning." "Different Honda," James assured her quickly. "But still, damn." Through the glass walls of Robert's office, they could see Jennifer speaking, her expressions animated but professional. Robert was nodding vigorously, occasionally shooting glances toward Maria that made her stomach churn. Sarah sidled up to Maria. "Maybe it won't be so bad. Maybe she just wants to buy a car and leave." But Maria knew better. In her 20 years of selling luxury vehicles, she had learned one vital truth. The wealthy clients who commanded the most respect were often the ones who tested how you treated people when you thought they had nothing to offer. The meeting in Robert's office seemed to go on forever. Maria watched as Jennifer's assistant took notes, as Robert made phone calls, as papers were passed back and forth. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only 30 minutes, Robert emerged from his office. "Maria," he called, his voice tight. "A word, please." On shaking legs, Maria walked toward Robert's office. Jennifer Lopez sat in one of the leather chairs, emanating an aura of quiet power. Her security team stood by the door, their faces impassive. "Please sit." Jennifer gestured to the other chair. Her voice was kind, which somehow made everything worse. Maria sank into the chair, her designer outfit suddenly feeling like a costume rather than armor. "Miss Lopez is interested in purchasing several vehicles for her upcoming music video shoot," Robert began, his tone carefully neutral. "The deal would be substantial. 12 vehicles to be exact," Jennifer added, her eyes never leaving Maria's face. "But before we proceed, I think we need to have a conversation about customer service and judgment." "I want to tell you a story," Jennifer began, her voice soft but commanding. "About a girl from the Bronx who used to drive a car much older than that Honda you mocked yesterday. She'd drive to dance classes, auditions, small gigs, anywhere that might give her a chance." Maria's hands trembled in her lap. The air in Robert's office felt thick with tension. "That girl," Jennifer continued, "learned very quickly how people treat you when they think you have nothing to offer. The dismissive looks, the condescending smiles, the subtle and not-so-subtle ways they let you know you don't belong in their world." Robert shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Miss Lopez, I want to assure you that this isn't our usual standard of service. But it is, Jennifer cut him off smoothly. Because I've been watching this dealership for 3 days. I saw how your staff treats people based on their appearance, their cars, their perceived worth. Yesterday wasn't an isolated incident. Maria found her voice, though it came out smaller than she intended. I deeply apologize for my behavior, Miss Lopez. If I had known… That's exactly the problem, Jennifer interrupted. You shouldn't have to know who I am to treat me, or anyone else, with respect. Through the office windows, Maria could see the entire staff trying to pretend they weren't watching. James caught her eye and gave her a sympathetic wince. The Honda Civic you saw me in? Jennifer continued. I bought it this week specifically to test dealerships in LA. Because when you're making a multi-million-dollar deal, you want to know the true character of who you're working with. The assistant, who had been quietly taking notes, spoke up. We visited 8 luxury dealerships this week. Only 2 passed our character test. Maria felt sick. And we failed spectacularly. Jennifer's gaze was unwavering. But here's the interesting thing. You're actually one of the best salespeople I've ever seen. Your product knowledge is impressive. Your presentation is flawless. And your closing skills are exceptional. I watched you with other customers yesterday. Thank you, Maria whispered, unsure if this was actually a compliment. Which makes it even more disappointing that you let prejudice and assumptions cloud your judgment. Do you know what that Honda represents to me? Maria shook her head. It represents every dreamer who's been told they don't belong. Every hard-working person who's been judged by their cover instead of their character. Every single person who's ever walked into a place like this and been made to feel less than. The security guards shifted slightly, and Maria realized with a start that they probably had their own stories of being judged and dismissed. Miss Lopez, Robert interjected, I assure you we will implement immediate changes in our training and policies. Actions speak louder than words, Jennifer replied. Which brings me to why I'm here. She turned to her assistant. Sarah, the contracts, please. The assistant opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick stack of papers. I am going to purchase 12 vehicles from this dealership, Jennifer announced. Total value approximately $2.5 million. But I have conditions. Maria sat up straighter, her professional instincts kicking in despite her discomfort. First, Jennifer continued, I want a new training program implemented. Not just the usual sensitivity training, but real, meaningful change in how you approach and treat all customers. Robert nodded vigorously. Of course, absolutely. Second, I want to establish a mentorship program for young salespeople from underprivileged backgrounds. Give them a real chance in luxury sales. That's actually a brilliant idea, Robert admitted. And third, Jennifer turned back to Maria. I want you to be in charge of both programs. Maria's head snapped up. Me? Yes, because you, more than anyone else here, understand both worlds. You've climbed the ladder, achieved success, but somewhere along the way, you forgot what it felt like to be on the other side. This is your chance to remember and to help others. The office fell silent. Outside, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the showroom floor, where the multi-million-dollar inventory gleamed, waiting. I don't know what to say, Maria managed. Say you'll do better, Jennifer replied simply. Say you'll remember that the person in the Honda today might be the person in the Rolls-Royce tomorrow. Say you'll help create a culture where success is measured not just in sales figures, but in how we treat every single person who walks through those doors. Robert cleared his throat. I think these are excellent suggestions, Miss Lopez. Maria, are you willing to take on this responsibility? Maria looked at Jennifer. Really looked at her. Beyond the designer suit and diamonds, she saw something of herself. Something of every person who had ever dared to dream bigger than their circumstances. Yes, she said firmly. Yes, I am. Jennifer's face softened into a smile. Good. Now, let's talk about those vehicles. I believe I mentioned a Range Rover yesterday. For the next hour, they discussed the details of the massive purchase. Maria's professional expertise came through despite her emotional turmoil, and she found herself actually enjoying the complex negotiations. Jennifer proved to be not just a savvy businesswoman, but also a genuinely engaged client. As the meeting wound down, Jennifer's assistant handed out copies of the contracts for review. The numbers made Maria's head spin, even with her reduced commission, a detail Jennifer had specifically negotiated. This would still be her biggest sale ever. "One more thing," Jennifer said as they stood to leave. "That Honda Civic? I'm donating it to your mentorship program. Let it serve as a reminder of where many of us started, and how far we can go." As they walked out of the office, the entire showroom staff stood at attention. Jennifer moved through the space with grace, occasionally stopping to chat with employees, treating everyone, from the cleaners to the sales staff, with the same warm respect. At the door, she turned back to Maria. "Tomorrow, my team will be here to start processing the vehicles. But more importantly, we'll begin working on those changes we discussed. I expect regular updates on the progress of both programs." "Of course, Miss Lopez. And again, I am truly sorry about yesterday." Jennifer paused, then said quietly so only Maria could hear, "Don't be sorry, be better. That's how real change happens." As the Rolls-Royce pulled away, Maria stood in the doorway, watching it disappear into the Los Angeles traffic. Behind her, she could hear the excited chatter of her colleagues, the rustle of papers as Robert began making plans for the new programs, the beginning of something different. The sun was setting over the city, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Somewhere out there, another dreamer was probably driving an old Honda, holding on to their hopes despite the world's judgment. Tomorrow, Maria would begin the work of making sure that dreamer would be welcomed here with respect and dignity. But for now, she simply stood there, letting the weight of the day's lessons settle into her soul, knowing that her world would never be quite the same again. The morning after Jennifer Lopez's visit, Maria arrived at Luxury Motors earlier than usual. Her hands trembled slightly as she unlocked the front door, her mind replaying yesterday's events on an endless loop. "Good morning, Mrs. Delgado." Manuel, the cleaner, greeted her with his usual warmth. For the first time in years, Maria really looked at him. "Good morning, Manuel. How long have you been working here?" Surprise flickered across his face at her unexpected interest. 12 years, Mrs. Delgado." "Please, call me Maria." She managed a small smile. 12 years. You've probably seen more than any of us." Manuel nodded thoughtfully. "I see everything, Mrs. Maria. The way people walk in hopeful and leave disappointed. The way some treat the cars like dreams they're afraid to touch." The conversation was interrupted by James bursting through the door. "Maria, have you seen the news?" She shook her head, pulling out her phone. There it was. Photos of Jennifer Lopez at various LA dealerships. All part of her undercover boss-style investigation. Luxury Motors was mentioned by name, though thankfully without specific details of Maria's behavior. "Morning, everyone," Robert's voice boomed across the showroom. "Team meeting in 5 minutes. Mandatory attendance." The staff gathered quickly, an unusual tension in the air. Everyone had either witnessed or heard about yesterday's events, and speculation ran wild about what changes were coming. Robert cleared his throat. "As you all know, yesterday was eventful. Miss Lopez's team will be here this morning to begin processing the vehicle purchases. But more importantly, we're implementing immediate changes in how we operate." Maria felt dozens of eyes turn toward her. "Maria will be heading up our new training and mentorship programs," Robert continued. "And our first change starts today. We're ending the practice of judging customers based on appearance or vehicle choice." Sarah from finance raised her hand. "But how do we prioritize our time? We can't spend hours with people who can't actually buy." "That's exactly the kind of thinking we need to change," Maria found herself saying. Yesterday, the person who couldn't actually buy turned out to be Jennifer Lopez. But even if it hadn't been her, even if it had been someone just dreaming about their future, they deserved respect. The meeting continued with Robert outlining the initial changes. As people began dispersing to their posts, Maria noticed Manuel still lingering nearby, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Everything okay, Manuel?" He hesitated. "My daughter. She's studying business at community college. She's always dreamed of being in sales, but..." He gestured to himself, his worn uniform. Maria felt something shift inside her. "What's her name?" "Isabella. Bring her in tomorrow. I think we just found our first mentorship candidate." The morning progressed with a flurry of activity. Jennifer's team arrived, Efficient, professional, and thorough. As they began processing the paperwork for the 12 vehicles, Maria found herself drawn into conversation with one of J-Lo's assistants. "You know," the assistant said quietly, "she almost didn't come back here." What changed her mind? She saw potential. Said sometimes the people who need to learn the lesson the most are the ones who can create the biggest change. Around noon, an elderly couple walked in. Maria watched as James started to dismiss them with his usual subtle tactics, then caught himself, remembering the new policy. "Welcome to Luxury Motors," he said instead, his smile becoming genuine. "How can I help you today?" The woman pulled out a thick envelope. "Our grandson just graduated medical school. We've been saving for years to help him get his dream car." James caught Maria's eye, a look of understanding passing between them. This was exactly what Jennifer had been talking about, the stories behind every person who walked through their doors. As the day went on, Maria found herself noticing things she'd overlooked for years. The way some customers hesitated before entering, gathering their courage. The mix of hope and uncertainty in their eyes as they looked at prices. The subtle straightening of shoulders when treated with respect, regardless of their appearance or apparent means. During her lunch break, she sat in Robert's office, working on the outline for the new training program. "You know," Robert said, reviewing her draft, "this could actually make us more successful, not less. Word gets around about how people are treated." "It's not just about sales," Maria replied, surprising herself. "It's about—" She was interrupted by a commotion in the showroom. Through the glass walls, they could see a familiar Honda Civic pulling into the lot, the one that had been towed yesterday. The young barista stepped out, clutching what looked like an envelope of cash. "I have the tow fees," she announced to no one in particular, her voice shaking but determined. "And I'd like to speak to a manager about your parking policies." Maria stood up. "I'll handle this." She walked out to meet the young woman, who looked both terrified and angry. "I'm Maria Delgado. I'm the one who called the tow truck yesterday." The barista's eyes widened in recognition. "I lost a day's wages dealing with that tow. I've been parking there for months with no problem." "I know," Maria said quietly. "And I'm sorry. We're implementing some changes here, starting with our relationship with our neighbors." She pulled out her credit card. "Please let me reimburse you for the tow fees and lost wages." The young woman, Amy, according to her coffee shop nameplate, stared at her in surprise. "Why the sudden change?" Maria glanced at the Honda, then back at Amy. "Let's just say I learned an important lesson about judging books by their covers. Would you like to come to my office? I think we can work out a better solution for employee parking in this area." As they walked to her office, Maria noticed Jennifer's team watching the interaction with approval. One of them was already on the phone, presumably reporting back about the changes being implemented. The afternoon brought more surprises. A man in paint-stained work clothes turned out to be a successful contractor looking to buy 3 luxury vehicles for his company. A teenager in ripped jeans was actually there on behalf of her tech millionaire father. Each interaction reinforced the lesson Jennifer had taught them. Near closing time, Maria gathered the sales team for a debrief. "Today was different," James admitted. "Better, actually. Did you know that couple I almost brushed off? They bought a Porsche. Cash." Others shared similar stories, and Maria could see the understanding dawning in their eyes. The prestigious brands they sold were more than just symbols of success. They were vessels for dreams, aspirations, and hard work. As she packed up for the day, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Heard good things about day one. Keep it up, J-Lo." Maria smiled, remembering Jennifer's words about action speaking louder than words. Today had been a start, but there was still so much work to do. Manuel was finishing his evening cleaning routine as she prepared to leave. "Isabella will be here tomorrow morning," he said, pride and nervousness mixing in his voice. "Good," Maria replied. "Tell her to come dressed exactly as she is. No need to pretend to be someone she's not." As she walked to her car, Maria passed the spot where Jennifer's Honda had been parked just 2 days ago. It seemed impossible that so much could change in such a short time. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The mentorship program needed to be structured, the training materials developed, and most importantly, hearts and minds needed to continue changing. But for the first time in years, Maria felt like she was doing something that mattered more than just selling expensive cars. The Los Angeles sunset painted the sky in brilliant colors, reflecting off the showroom windows and the gleaming vehicles within. Somewhere out there, Jennifer Lopez was probably watching, waiting to see if her lesson would truly take root and grow. Maria made a silent promise. Not just to Jennifer, but to every person who would ever walk through those doors, that it would. The next morning brought a fresh wave of nervous energy to Luxury Motors. Isabella, Manuel's daughter, arrived precisely at 8 a.m., dressed in a carefully pressed but clearly well-worn blazer. "Mrs. Delgado," she spoke softly, her father hovering protectively nearby. "I'm Isabella Martinez." Maria noticed how the young woman tried to hide her shaking hands by clasping them together. Just days ago, she might have dismissed Isabella based on her modest attire. Now she saw something else: determination, intelligence, and untapped potential. "Welcome, Isabella. And please, call me Maria. Shall we talk in my office?" As they walked through the showroom, Maria caught fragments of conversation from her colleagues dealing with the morning customers. "Of course you can sit in the Bentley," James was saying to a teenager in baggy jeans. "Let me show you all the features." Sarah, usually dismissive of less affluent-looking clients, was patiently explaining financing options to an elderly couple. In her office, Isabella sat rigidly, her resume clutched in her hands. "Tell me," Maria began, "why luxury car sales?" "Honestly?" Isabella took a deep breath. "I've watched these cars drive by my whole life. I've seen how people treat my dad when he cleans them. I want to be part of changing that world from the inside." Maria felt her throat tighten. "Perfect answer. When can you start?" Just then, Robert burst into the office. "Maria, J-Lo's team is here. They want to see how we're implementing the changes." Isabella started to stand, but Maria waved her back down. "Stay. This involves you too." Jennifer's assistant Sarah walked in with two other team members. Her sharp eyes took in the scene. Isabella in her modest blazer, the resume still clutched in her hands, Manuel watching proudly through the office window. "Miss Lopez asked us to evaluate the sincerity of the changes being implemented," Sarah stated, consulting her tablet. "I see you're already interviewing for the mentorship program?" "Yes," Maria replied. "Isabella here has the drive and intelligence we need. She just hasn't had the opportunities others have had." Sarah's professional mask softened slightly. "Tell me, Isabella, what would you do differently if you were selling these cars?" Isabella straightened in her chair. "I would remember that every person walking through that door has a story. Maybe they saved for years, maybe they're buying their dream car, maybe they're just starting to believe they could own one someday. They all deserve respect." The room fell silent. Sarah made a few notes on her tablet, then looked up with a smile. "Miss Lopez will be pleased to hear this. She has a special interest in seeing genuine change here." As the team left, Maria turned back to Isabella. "So, about that start date." The rest of the morning was a whirlwind of activity. Jennifer's team began processing the paperwork for the 12 vehicles, each worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Maria found herself constantly moving between supervising the sales staff, working with Isabella, and ensuring every customer received the same level of respect. Around lunchtime, a commotion erupted in the showroom. A young man in paint-splattered clothes had walked in, and despite the new policies, one of the newer salespeople was clearly struggling with old habits. "Is there a problem here?" Maria approached quickly. "No problem," the salesperson said stiffly. "I was just suggesting that perhaps the Honda dealership down the street." "I'm actually here about the Rolls-Royce," the young man interrupted. "I own a successful street art gallery, and I'm looking to expand my collection." Maria watched with satisfaction as the salesperson's face flushed red. "Thomas, why don't you let Isabella handle this one? Consider it part of her training." Isabella stepped forward, her initial nervousness giving way to genuine enthusiasm as she began discussing the vehicle's features. The artist, it turned out, had very specific questions about the custom paint options. Later that afternoon, as Isabella closed her first sale, a Rolls-Royce Ghost, to the street artist, Maria received another text. "The mentorship program looks promising. Keep going, J-Lo." Maria smiled, watching Isabella shake hands with her first client. The young woman's father, Manuel, was trying to discreetly wipe tears from his eyes as he cleaned nearby. "You know," Robert said, appearing beside Maria, This could be the beginning of something much bigger than just our dealership. Other luxury retailers are already asking about our new training program." Maria nodded, thinking about all the other Isabellas out there, all the dreamers in Hondas who might someday return in Rolls-Royces. Maybe that was Jennifer's plan all along, to create a ripple effect. The day wound down with an unexpected visit. The young barista from the coffee shop, Amy, walked in just before closing. "I wanted to thank you," she said to Maria. "Not just for reimbursing the tow fees, but for actually listening yesterday. It meant a lot." Maria felt something shift inside her again, another small piece of her old self falling away, making room for something better. "Amy," she said suddenly, "how would you feel about being part of our focus group? We're redesigning our customer service approach, and we need input from real people with real experiences." The young woman's face lit up. "Really? You want my opinion? Exactly the kind of perspective we need." As the sun set over Los Angeles, Maria stood in the doorway of Luxury Motors, watching the interplay of light on metal and glass. The showroom looked the same as it had 3 days ago, but everything else had changed. Isabella was at her new desk, studying product brochures with intense concentration. James was showing a family in modest clothes the features of a luxury SUV, his usual condescension replaced by genuine engagement. Even the cleaning staff moved through the space with a new sense of dignity. This, Maria realized, was what Jennifer Lopez had seen: the potential for change, the possibility that one lesson in humility could transform not just a dealership, but perhaps an entire industry's approach to success and worth. Her phone buzzed one final time for the day. "Tomorrow, we start loading the vehicles for the video shoot. But more importantly, we continue building something meaningful, J-Lo." Maria typed back, for the first time, "Thank you for not giving up on us, on me." The reply came quickly. "Sometimes the biggest dreams start with a Honda Civic. Never forget that. See you tomorrow, J-Lo." 1 week had passed since Jennifer Lopez's transformative visit to Luxury Motors, and Maria sat in her office reviewing the changes that had swept through the dealership. Her desk, once pristine and intimidating, now held a collection of resumes from mentorship applicants and draft proposals for the new training program. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. Isabella, now in her 2nd week of training, stood there with an uncertain expression. "Maria, there's something you should see." Following Isabella to the showroom, Maria found an elderly woman standing beside a weathered Toyota Corolla in the parking lot. The woman was holding a small, worn photograph. "Can I help you?" Maria approached with a warm smile, a genuine one, not the practiced expression she'd worn for so many years. "I hope so." The woman's voice quivered slightly. "This was my husband's dream." She held out the photograph, showing a much younger man standing proudly beside a Rolls-Royce. "He passed away last month, and I want to fulfill his dream. Even if I can only sit in one for a moment." The old Maria would have seen a waste of time. The new Maria saw something else entirely. "Of course. Isabella, would you please show our guest to the Rolls-Royce Ghost? The white one, it matches the one in her photo." As Isabella led the woman away, Robert appeared at Maria's side. "You know she's not going to buy anything." "No," Maria agreed. "But that's not always the point, is it?" Just then, her phone buzzed with a familiar notification. Her heart skipped a beat as she read the message. "Final inspection today. See you at 2 p.m., J-Lo." Maria gathered the staff for a quick meeting. "Jennifer Lopez is coming to inspect the vehicles and review our progress. But more importantly, she's coming to see if we've really changed. Should we dress up or something?" Thomas, the newest salesperson, asked nervously. "No," Maria replied firmly. "We're going to be exactly who we are now. No pretense, no show. Just genuine people doing our best to be better." The morning passed in a blur of activity. Regular customers came and went, each treated with the same respect regardless of their appearance or vehicle. Maria watched with pride as Isabella handled her 3rd sale of the week, a Range Rover to a young entrepreneur who had arrived in a beat-up Volkswagen. At 1:30 p.m., an unexpected visitor walked through the doors. It was Amy, the barista from next door, looking nervous but determined. "I have something to tell you," she said to Maria. "I've been saving up, working double shifts, and I want to buy a car." "Not a luxury car," she added quickly. but I was hoping you could recommend a good dealership, someone who'll treat me like you do now." Maria felt tears prick at her eyes. "Actually, I have a better idea. Remember that Honda Civic Jennifer Lopez used?" Amy nodded. "She donated it to our mentorship program, but we haven't decided exactly how to use it yet. How would you feel about a lease-to-own arrangement? Special rate, since you're practically family now." Amy's eyes widened. "Are you serious?" "Consider it our way of making amends for the tow truck incident. Plus, you'll need reliable transportation when you start your business classes next semester." "How did you know about?" "Isabella mentioned you were interested in business school. We might have another mentorship opening soon." Their conversation was interrupted by the distinctive sound of a Rolls-Royce engine. Maria's heart began to race as she recognized the familiar black Phantom pulling into the lot. This time, there was no tension in the air, just excitement and a touch of nervous anticipation. The staff gathered naturally, not in the forced formation of last week, but in small groups of people who had become genuine colleagues. Jennifer Lopez emerged from the Rolls-Royce, once again immaculately dressed. But this time her expression was softer, more approachable. She paused as she noticed Amy standing with Maria. "Making friends with the neighbors?" Jennifer's eyes twinkled. "Actually," Maria replied, "we're discussing a lease arrangement for your Honda, and possibly a future mentorship position." Jennifer's face broke into a genuine smile. "Now that's exactly what I was hoping to hear." She turned to survey the showroom. "Show me what else has changed." For the next hour, Maria and the staff guided Jennifer through the transformations that had taken place. They introduced Isabella, now confidently discussing vehicle features with customers. They showed her the new training materials, developed with input from people of all backgrounds. They introduced her to Manuel, no longer invisible but an integral part of the team. "And what about you, Maria?" Jennifer asked quietly when they had a moment alone. "What's changed for you?" Maria glanced around the showroom, at Amy chatting with Isabella, at Manuel proudly watching his daughter work, at customers of all types being treated with equal respect. "Everything," she replied honestly. "I remember who I used to be before I got caught up in appearances and assumptions. I remember what it feels like to be judged, to be dismissed, and I never want to make anyone feel that way again." Jennifer nodded slowly. "That's why I came back, not just for the cars. I saw something in you, someone who had forgotten their own journey but could still find their way back." "Thank you," Maria said softly, "for not giving up on us, on me." "Sometimes," Jennifer smiled, "the best lessons come from a Honda Civic." As they walked back to the main showroom, Robert was finishing the paperwork for the vehicle purchases. The 12 luxury cars would be transported to the video shoot location the next day. "One last thing," Jennifer announced to the gathered staff. "The video we're shooting? It's about transformation, about remembering where you came from and lifting others up as you climb. And this dealership, your story, is now part of that message." She turned to Maria. "The Honda stays here as a reminder. Put it in the showroom if you have to. Let it remind everyone that dreams don't have a dress code, and success doesn't look the same for everyone." As Jennifer prepared to leave, she paused by the door. "I'll be watching, All of us who started from somewhere humble are watching. Make it count." After she left, the showroom was quiet for a moment. Then Amy spoke up. "So, about that Honda." Maria laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. "Let's go handle that paperwork, and maybe talk about that mentorship program too." The sun was setting over Los Angeles as Maria finished up for the day. Through the window, she could see the Honda Civic parked proudly among the luxury vehicles, no longer a symbol of what someone couldn't afford, but a reminder of where many of them had started. Her phone buzzed one last time. "The real test isn't what happens when I'm watching. It's what happens every day, with every person who walks through those doors." "I trust you'll remember that, J-Lo." Maria typed back, "We'll never forget." As she gathered her things to leave, she passed Isabella closing her 4th sale of the week. Manuel was nearby, no longer pretending to clean just to watch his daughter. Now he could stand proudly and openly observe her success. The transformation wasn't just about selling cars anymore. It was about changing lives, one interaction at a time. And, somewhere out there, Jennifer Lopez had known that all along. Maria took one last look at the showroom before leaving. Tomorrow, The 12 luxury vehicles would head off to their glamorous future in a music video. But the real star of this story would stay right here, a humble Honda Civic, reminding them all that every dream, no matter how big or small, deserves respect. And that, Maria realized, was the greatest sale she'd ever make. Not of cars, but of hope, dignity, and second chances. The following morning, as the transport trucks arrived to collect the vehicles for Jennifer's music video, Maria stood in the showroom watching the carefully choreographed loading process. Each luxury car, representing millions in sales and an even greater value in lessons learned, was treated with precise care. "It's kind of symbolic, isn't it?" Isabella said, joining Maria by the window. "How they're all being loaded together, regardless of brand or price." "Just like how we treat our customers now," Maria smiled. "Speaking of which, how's Amy doing with the Honda paperwork?" "All set. She cried when she got the keys yesterday. Said it was the first time anyone had believed in her enough to give her a chance." The showroom was unusually quiet that morning. Most of the staff stood watching the loading process, each lost in their own thoughts about the events of the past week. Robert emerged from his office, waving a stack of papers. "You won't believe this. 3 other luxury dealerships have called asking about our new training program. They want to implement something similar." Jennifer was right, Maria mused. It was never just about us, was it? Just then, a familiar face appeared at the door. Sarah, Jennifer's assistant. "Good morning," she announced, tablet in hand. "Miss Lopez asked me to deliver something personally." She handed Maria an envelope. Inside was a simple note and a photograph. The photo showed a young Jennifer Lopez standing next to an old beaten-up car, her smile radiant despite the humble surroundings. The note read, "For your training room, let it remind everyone that every person who walks through your doors has a story, a dream, and the potential to surprise you. Never forget your own transformation. With love, Jennifer." Maria felt tears welling up in her eyes. "We'll frame it and put it right next to the Honda." "About that," Sarah smiled. "There's something else. Miss Lopez has arranged for a small camera crew to document your mentorship program. She wants to include it in a broader project about breaking down barriers in luxury industries." The staff exchanged excited looks. Their story, their transformation, would help inspire others to change too. As the last transport truck pulled away, Maria gathered everyone for an impromptu meeting. "Today marks a new chapter," she began. "Those luxury cars are heading off to be part of Jennifer's video, but our real work stays right here. Every person who walks through those doors has their own version of my story, of Jennifer's story, of all our stories." She gestured to the Honda, now proudly displayed near the entrance. "This car isn't just about Jennifer Lopez anymore. It's about Amy getting her chance at business school. It's about Isabella breaking into luxury sales. It's about Manuel being treated with the respect he always deserved." Robert stepped forward. "And it's about you, Maria. Your willingness to change has inspired all of us." The morning sun streamed through the windows, catching the perfect polish of the remaining vehicles. But now, they looked different somehow. Not just as symbols of success, but as vessels for dreams yet to be realized. Maria's phone buzzed with one final message. "The video will be amazing, but the real masterpiece is what you've built there. Keep the doors, and your hearts, open to every dreamer who walks in. That's what luxury really means. J-Lo." And as Maria looked around at her transformed workplace, at Isabella confidently greeting a new customer, at Amy parking her Honda proudly next to the Bentleys, at Manuel working with his head held high, she knew that this was just the beginning of their story. The true luxury, they had all learned, wasn't in the cars they sold, but in the dignity they gave to every dream that walked through their doors.